my name's Eric. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I travel part-time in my Sprinter van right behind me and work the other half back in Canada. My van's a 2012 Mercedes Sprinter van. It's a 3-liter diesel engine, and it had about 145,000 kilometers on it when I got it, and as of right now I think it has about 165,000 kilometers. The van was in pretty good shape when I bought it. I had records of all the work that had been done on it and services and that kind of thing, so I kind of knew all the history of it. There was a bit of a leak after I had gotten it, just from one of the roof rails, and just had to get that fixed up. My van's a 144-inch wheelbase. It's the shortest of the 3 lengths, but it is a high roof. I had kind of been looking all over. I was looking at like kind of the Chevy and Econoline vans initially, but I realized that I wanted something I could stand up in, so that kind of cut out quite a few of them, and it was just really down to this one and the Ford Transit, and I decided on the Sprinter just because that's the one I had looked at that particular day. Patches have been kind of from all over places I've been, different cities, different states, national parks, that kind of thing. The patches are attached just by Velcro. I had initially thought about trying to sew them on, but my friends on our home on the roam decided to show me this, and it's worked pretty well. And just recently I've got my Toronto Maple Leafs bead necklace. So my van doesn't have any windows anywhere else besides the front here. I can't see through the back despite having the rear facing window or mirror. I've got the mirrors on the side and I've never really had any issues with it. It does fit into kind of any regular spot as well. I went to university a little bit early, I would say. Or college for those in America, and never really took a gap year. I had always kind of planned on doing it after. I had kind of followed it on YouTube and Instagram and all those things, kind of the movement, I guess, and just, you know, how people were doing it. And once I had graduated and worked for a little while, saved up, I bought my own van and decided to convert it, and now I'm here. The headlamp at the back here, just so it's nice and easy to grab. I always know where it is, even if it's dark. I've been using underneath here for storage for my shoes and stuff. I've also got the storage up here, which is for my hat and sunglasses and that kind of stuff. I don't usually store a ton of stuff up here because I always like to keep it cut off when I'm sleeping. I always put the curtains down. Thank you, Grandma, for putting up the magnets on here as well. And then this other one comes across too. And when they're together, they really don't allow any light to come through. And they're pretty easy to separate. I just set them up on a little bungee cord and hook system. So they're nice to move out of the way if I don't want them around or just need to get them out of the way. But then they can hook back up pretty easily. So coming into the kitchen, I've got some storage again in behind the driver's side here. I've got some beer, my scissors, and my stove that I keep down here. I've also got a little fire extinguisher down here just in case. I've got my sink up here. It's a nice big sink. I can wash my hair in it, but the faucet is a little bit short. Wish it was a little bit taller. The garbage, and then with the propane down here, just held up with bungee cords. You can tell I like bungee cords. They seem to work. And then I've got 5 gallons of water here, another 5-gallon freshwater tank in the back, and then this is my gray water tank, and a foot pump, which has been pretty good for me, and the water pressure is pretty good and doesn't waste water or anything like that. So carbon monoxide alarm in the corner there with propane. Most of the time I'll have the vent and the door open so I don't have any issues, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I've got some driftwood up here that I found just from back home, stained it, and then I've got some storage underneath. It's just a big open drawer kind of thing with some baskets, another set in behind. It goes the full length to the wall, so there's plenty of space. And I've got pretty much all my dry food storage under there on top of plates and bowls and utensils and that kind of thing. Underneath that, I've got my fridge. It's just on caster wheels underneath with a locking system. It's a Dometic 35 quart model, I guess. And it's plenty of space just for me. I've never had any issues storing food or anything like that. And it's pretty efficient because it's on 12 volts. It's acacia wood countertop. It was stained this kind of color or a little bit lighter color when I got it, and then I stained it a little darker and then put a coat of linseed oil on top. It's a natural finish, and all you have to do is just kind of reapply it every year or so. I've also got a bit of a extension here so I can make the countertop just a little bit bigger, have a bit more room to work with. Also acts as an extension for the bed. Piece of foam over here will just sit at the end, cover will come out, and then it's a full length queen size bed, and it's about 5 inches narrower. I had thrown together some IKEA stuff before, but never really anything just on my own. The first time I'd ever used a jigsaw was cutting the opening for the van up here, so that was freaky, but it gave me a little bit more confidence for it, I guess. I built it over this past summer. I was working about 60 to 80 hours a week kind of thing in the peak of summer, so I didn't do a whole lot of building time, but overall probably about 4 months. So for the walls and the ceiling of the van, I went with a 6mm plywood Douglas fir because I knew it was resistant towards warping and moisture and that kind of thing. They took a lot of work, but it is a pretty simple system. It's just furring strips down the side here, and then I fastened the plywood to that. Because the plywood's pretty thin, it didn't really have any issue. It wasn't too heavy to stay up. The ceiling was a bit more of a pain. The Sprinter design, I guess, it narrows out at the front and the back, so trying to figure out the right widths and stuff and shapes is a bit of a pain. So on the walls and for these sides of the ceiling, I just put a clear coat on, or a few coats of clear coat on. And then on this one, I stained it this kind of darker brown color, a little bit to match with the countertops here, and then put the same kind of clear coat on top of that. So I've got the Fantastic fan. I know there's a few different models. Mine is pretty basic, just has the 3 speeds, and then you can switch the direction, whether it's pulling air in or pulling air out kind of thing. On the ceiling as well, I've got these pot lights that are just dimmable, and they're just touch sensitive. They're all in a separate system, so they're all individually done, and you can brighten them or dim them as you want. Last name is Dawson. We had this sign laying around, and I decided to take it with me and put it up there. For right here is just another step to get onto the bed. And then down here is a drawer with a bunch of storage for my pots and pans and canned food and knives and cleaning supplies. When I'm driving, I try to remember to latch it closed ahead of time. So I've got the corkboard up here. It's nice to have just little mementos and maps and little postcards and stuff, just up there held up with little pins. Down here I've got a little basket for toiletries and that kind of stuff. I've got this ukulele that I got when I was in Indonesia, just on the wall here. And yeah, on the back I've got all my storage over those kind of sections there. Everything that I need is back there, and I don't really have much more clothes than what's back there. A huge con is not having a bathroom or a toilet readily available. I don't have one in here. I'd like to get one. That's another thing that I'd like to add. But yeah, trying to figure that out on top of finding a place to sleep is sometimes a pain. So underneath the bed, I've got access to my kind of garage underneath. Just for the things that I kind of grab most often, I've got this bin down here. And on top of that, I've got a couple blankets because at the moment I don't have a heater. So those are pretty key when I need them. Explore America map. There was just one that I found on Amazon that looked kind of cool. It's got all the main highways and routes, I guess, around the States. And on top of that, it's got all the national parks, national monuments, national forests. So I can kind of plan out different places I want to go see. It just kind of gives me a little bit of a bigger picture. So on the top of the van, I've got two 100-watt solar panels. That's been more than enough for me. I've never needed any more than that. I've got 200 amp hours of deep cycle gel batteries. They're almost always above kind of 80%, but I have taken them down to about 60% in the past, but never anywhere near 50%, which is nice to have. Don't really have to worry about it or anything like that. I've got my bike, which you can see right off the bat. I've just got a bike mount down there. My guitar, sleeping bag, sleeping pad. I've got a kettle in there and a French press that I don't really use very much. A hammock, some hiking shoes, another 5-gallon water jug to make 10 altogether. Extra diesel tank and a few bags just along this side. I've got my tools. I've also got a couple of camp chairs. And my table for cooking just in the back. A couple blankets and some cleaning supplies, I guess. I like to know what I'm going to be doing in the foreseeable future. And it's helpful to have kind of those end goals of, you have to be here, you have to do this at this time. But in between, it's nice because you kind of have that freedom to make a decision to do one thing one day and then change it the next morning kind of thing. So. Thanks for coming to check out my van. If you want to follow along on my journey, my Instagram is saucedaws, SAUCEDAWS. Thanks for coming along.